All right, here we go. On November 19th at 3:29 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, calculate that for your own time zone, Pluto re-enters Aquarius for the long haul. This is a major shift in the collective energies, and here to honor this is Timothy Glenn for round 9, the last in our Pluto series of this quintuple crossing of Pluto from Capricorn into Aquarius back and forth. So welcome, Timothy.
Thank you. This is an amazing journey we've been on for, a year and a half or so, in the exact center or the heart of this big transit.
Yeah, since March 23rd, 2023, and we've had that preview, kind of more of a preview in 2024, but the last round at the very end of Capricorn since September 1st. So we're still in it. We're recording this on November 8th. So if we're not mentioning things that have taken place after that, that's why. But where should we start with this? This really is a major shift, with it actually being in there for like the next 20 years.
Yeah, and it won't be back in Capricorn for more than 2 centuries.
Mm-hmm.
This is no minor detail.
Yeah. So what have we learned from kind of Pluto and Capricorn, and what are you anticipating now that we've kind of had multiple previews for Pluto being in Aquarius for the long haul?
I'm seeing the dissolution of all of the old Capricornian type top-down structures, all those authoritarian grids that keep things locked in this control system, and things really opening up. And a major keyword with this, as we established, or as we get established in Aquarius, decentralization will be a major theme.
With Aquarius being kind of the centralizing force of systems, right?
And I really look forward to this. Of course, I'm an Aquarius, so I have a slight bias here. And I'm really looking forward to this because, as we've discussed many times, this old top-down pyramid structure of control has really run its course, and it's really bogus. It might have been okay for certain times and places, but not now, and not where we're going. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more and more of the breakdown of the old systems. And it's not like we come to November 19th and poof, it's over. There will still be some momentum. We'll go into a period where there will be still some residue and so forth. But I really have waited for this for a long time.
And I think that that's unusual. I mean, you and I have kind of more of an optimistic view of Pluto just in general, but also Pluto in Aquarius in particular. I know some people are like, oh, we're going to see the dark side of big tech. We're going to see the dark side of, politics. And well, yeah, we are. But also we're on the tail end of all that Capricorn. We're due for the regeneration of kind of like a new order, not the scary new world order, but a new order coming into being on the back end of that Pluto and Capricorn transit.
I really look forward to this because there is this facet of Pluto in Aquarius that, yes, will show us the dark side, but it's like, okay, if you have an abscess, you just pretend it's not there, you just put some bandage over it, or does it, this is like lancing a boil,
Yeah.
Then, we're going to see the dark side of all of this stuff because Aquarius isn't going to try to hide it. Aquarius is going to say, hey, look at this stuff, man, this is bogus.
Yeah, let's have a revolution. We need to change these things. So Yeah, it's funny. This morning I posted a video on the full moon in Taurus and Saturn stationing direct, which happens just 4 days before this Pluto ingress into Aquarius. And I got a little climate change note on it because I was noting that one of the things that may come up is um, sort of seeing the corruption in humanitarian groups or corruption in like earth protection organizations that maybe aren't doing those kinds of things, just like we saw with the governments and the religions and kind of the, authorities when Pluto was in Capricorn. I do feel like when Pluto's in Aquarius, we're going to start having kind of a different focus in terms of where is the corruption showing up. But then, you also get that kind of rebirth energy with that.
Yeah, where isn't the corruption showing up? Yeah, humanity has a pretty deep, dark, yucky shadow side that still hasn't been integrated. And that's a fairly Aquarian thing to do. It's like, let's face the reality of it and let's get her done.
So having kind of that enthusiasm to engage with the change enthusiasm. I mean, I do feel like, yeah, Aquarius is a much more kind of change friendly sign, right? Capricorn does not like change. And so with Aquarius, even though we're getting that Plutonian wrecking ball, especially in the beginning, it does feel like as a sign, Aquarius is more amenable to change than Capricorn.
Well, sure, it's revolutionary. And, I've been really into tracking the big patterns with the synodic cycles of our friends, Uranus and Pluto. Like I wrote those 2 articles, well, I don't even remember when it was, Pluto and Uranus go cycling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool because there you've got the planet of evolution and the planet of revolution. And Uranus, of course, is the ruler of a certain sign. And so we get another little flavor of that just with Pluto entering Aquarius, which is ruled by our friend Uranus. And as far as I'm concerned, Uranus really is our friend.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they all are. If you make your peace with all the planets and whatever energy is there, it'll go a lot better than approaching so many things like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, and I know there is a lot of kind of doomer energy at the moment. I mean, I'm hearing a mix, but there are people that are very troubled by the results and very shocked by the results of the US election and just kind of like, oh no, it's the end. And I'm like, no, there's so many changing energies with different planets moving into other signs and the North Node in January moving into Pisces. Like we're just starting to get a very different flavor. And it's not just 1 or 2 planets. It's, Pluto moving into Aquarius. And then next year, January 11th, the North Node entering Pisces. That's going to be a big shift from Aries, like war, war, war. I'm right. You're wrong. All of that kind of aggressive energy that we've been seeing. We are moving into more of a unity consciousness. And then we get Neptune entering Aries and Saturn entering Aries and Uranus entering Gemini. It's like, this is all very different energy.
That's going to be really interesting because Saturn and Neptune are going to be right together at 0 degrees of Aries. That's going to be a slight shift of energy expressed here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking about this morning about Neptune moving into Aries. And I know people are nervous about that because that's where Neptune was at the start of the Civil War. But it's spending a lot of time in late Pisces and then going back forward. And so by the time that we get Neptune in Aries, I feel like a lot of the propaganda machine, like the fog of war, the miasma, that movement of Neptune into this fire sign of Aries, it's almost like it kind of dries out. And on top of that, you get Saturn there, which I kind of feel like Saturn and Neptune in Aries might sort of cancel each other out in the beginning. I don't know. What are you thinking with that?
I'm thinking it's going to clear the air when it comes to the fog of war.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, we've had plenty of fog of war here, but you put those two together right at the beginning of Aries, it's like, okay, suddenly things are going to clear.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get a date for people. So Neptune enters Aries on March 30th of 2025, and then Saturn enters Aries on May 24th of 2025. But because Neptune moves slower, Saturn's, essentially going to be right there in a very tight conjunction, which will be nicely sextiling Pluto in early Aquarius. So, yeah.
So, we do tend to have a more positive approach to things than most folks out here, because the doom and gloom thing is really big out here. It's part of the shadow side. Everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Or not just the other shoe, the universe has lots of shoes. They're lining up and getting ready to drop at any moment.
I mean, for some people, if they have, been living in like an echo chamber or something like that, then yeah, there could be multiple shoes that start dropping. But, that echo chamber is not real. And so, I mean, that's the thing with Saturn, is that you get the realism. And so as Saturn in Pisces starts catching up to Neptune, I do feel like, again, some of that like fog of war, all the confusion, all the nonsense, and like, putting people on pedestals and everything, Saturn's going to come through and be like, no, you are not on the list anymore. Like, you are not our leader and you are not our leader. And so I do feel like it's a mixture for people, because when you have an idol, and your idol topples, then that's disappointing. But ultimately, having idols is very disempowering. And so with the Pluto and Aquarius, where it's like power to the people, I do feel like that's it's a healing thing, but it could be ugly before it gets beautiful.
That's typical of detox.
Mm-hmm.
As we do, herbal cleanses or whatever kind of detox we do to clear things out of our system, that can be pretty yucky.
Mm-hmm. Or, the butterfly, when the caterpillar goes into that cocoon, there's a period where it's just like mush, like the caterpillar doesn't exist anymore, but the butterfly's not there either. And then when the butterfly comes out is also kind of a dangerous period. Like the wings need to dry and everything. But again, that Aries energy coming up, I feel like it's very supportive of new things, the first sign, and having things move into that first sign. I feel like that's going to be supportive of the changes that we're seeing with Pluto.
And Pluto does carry a lot of that total transformational energy, which can be analogized by the caterpillar going through the process of becoming the butterfly.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it shows up, but I wore a butterfly shirt today just in honor of this metamorphosis period, because it does feel kind of celebratory to have Pluto moving in there. I mean, we've been doing this series for a year and a half, but Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008. And so and that's been pretty brutal, like not much of the prior authorities have survived that. And it's been kind of a rough go. And I do feel like the Pluto and Aquarius phase is going to somehow be easier overall to integrate. And also just, again, the word I keep getting is this kind of enthusiasm or this sense of adventure. And with that, nice sextile to the Aries planets, to me, it does feel like there's a change, but it's like we're ready for it now.
Exactly. It's like, why be afraid of something that you've been consciously and conscientiously preparing for?
Mm-hmm.
And You mentioned that great triple transit of Pluto going back and forth over the cusp, entering Capricorn in 2008. Well, in the interim, we had Pluto and Uranus squaring each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote an 8 article series on Uranus square Pluto.
I'll link to that below.
Okay, cool. That was a biggie. That was, with this time, like in the 2010s or whatever, 20 teens or whatever we call that, that was really the major astrological influence at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It was really bringing forth the revolutionary and evolutionary energies of those two working together. And as I mentioned in those articles, that whatever is birthed at the conjunction is put to test at the square.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, gee, that was the mid-60s when they were conjunct for the first time since we've even been aware of the existence of Pluto. And if you just pan the camera back and you look at that a bit, you go, whoa, wait a minute. What was birth? There you get into the mid-60s when they started going exact, and they danced back for what was like 5 different times they were exactly conjunct. And you look at all the things that came out in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty wild. As I like to say, first of all, if you remember the 60s, you weren't there. It was a wild time. I'm a baby boomer, so I was a young teenager, crazy kid, and just, caught that wave. But the adventure was just really beginning. And that's really when, like, women's rights, civil rights, the environmental movement, et cetera. Of course, so much of this got hijacked, which is typical.
Mm-hmm.
But we're starting to realize the hijackers are not the real deal here.
Well, and that's the thing, these group energies that are supposedly working for the benefit of humanity, those are some of the things that I think we're going to find, oh, yeah, that didn't work. Oh, that didn't work either. But it doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we're going to start having more of like a cleansing process with these, where we start getting back to more of that idealism from the 60s. But it actually starts to manifest because now we're dealing with a society that has recognized, oh, top-down authority, don't trust those experts. We're going to join together and make our own movements. And so I think we are going to find sort of strange alliances. Yeah,
some that you never would have thought would be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, Aquarius likes weird. It's okay. And with Aquarius, to some degree, anything goes. We want to be wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all kinds of amazing possibilities right in front of us, including technology. And yes, we can get a better look at the quote unquote dark side of technology. And it's not that we just want to get sucked into being just cogs in the wheel here of the big AI or whatever, but these are things that we can use during this phase of adjustment, because really we're going to go through this phase, which will be quite a few years, of having technologies that help us do things that we really know we could do without technology.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that we've done for thousands of years. We don't need this stuff. Now, we're awakening to that. We've been awakening to it. And yeah, okay, our mental bodies get it. We have no problem with it. But then getting it into the heart, getting it into the emotional body, that's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to vibrate all the way down into the physical level, we need to really, really, really open up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things that's going to be really influenced for the rest of 2024 and then off and on in 2025 is the Mars in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius energy. So we have that Leo heart, and then Aquarius more like the circulatory system, or Leo the individual, Aquarius the group. But within that is a lot of activity on the U.S. South node in Aquarius and the U.S. North node in Leo. And there is this tension there that I think is going to play out a little differently than what we've seen with the opposition of Mars at the end of Cancer opposite Pluto at the end of Capricorn. We had that recently, early November, that was most in effect. But how are you seeing that kind of tension playing out with the change of signs?
Well, it all becomes a different ball game then. You know, the shift can be looking like, okay, that's not really that big a deal, but then you realize, yeah, it is. It really is. So, and again, to have the old structures, the old ways of thinking and of perceiving things, I mean, our whole reality is going to change. And fine. If we base our future on our past, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But Aquarius really likes imagination, likes to reach out there and explore all kinds of possibilities. And we have amazing possibilities right in front of us if we're willing to accept it as reality. Oh, but the system here has just groomed us to reject our own infinite potential.
Well, and I was also thinking with Aquarius, the energy of detachment. I think that is going to be very helpful because the people that I'm hearing from that are having the biggest struggles right now are people that were kind of profoundly attached to a specific narrative or a specific political party or something like that. And I feel like that movement from kind of I'm the boss Capricorn, moving from cardinal signs into, yes, fixed signs, but it's like we're moving more with this Aquarian ability to kind of step back and look at things a little more objectively maybe than Capricorn, which is very protective and doesn't want to change. That Capricorn Cancer axis is more traditional versus Leo's kind of like, well, I'm out here, I'm the star, I'm breaking new ground, and then very heart-centered. But that's different than Cancer energy, like Mars and Cancer, can be very emotional and sometimes irrationally emotional if it feels like you're threatened or something. Whereas Mars in Leo, I feel like that's a happier position for Mars to be in. It's a stronger position, but I don't know. I just feel like that's going to work better for that tension.
And the whole game with Capricorn tends to be capable of lending itself to dogmatism a bit, whereas Aquarius just says, "Oh, screw that stuff." And
you do you.
That's it, yeah. But you mentioned that we're talking about fixed signs. Like Aquarius is fixed air.
Yeah.
Almost what
does that even mean?
What? and Leo, of course, fixed fire. Whatever. Yes, I see a lot more flexibility. And aside from that, if we just look at the awakening that we're part of right now, it's like we're not going to be repeating the old patterns, which you could almost count on in previous centuries.
Yeah. So when there is all the fear of what's going to happen, oh my gosh, it's based on what we've known. It's based on these old structures. And I think some of the dooming is just it's grief of the familiar falling away, but it's like the fear and the grief is almost too much to realize, hey, that wasn't working. Like I kind of think of people like when they've been in an abusive relationship, you can have PTSD from a relationship and you're out of the relationship, but you're still operating in this narrow bandwidth because like you've been programmed that if you step outside of there, you're going to get attacked. And I feel like a lot of humanity has PTSD. And as we break into Aquarius, that's one of the things that's going to start falling away because stuff is just going to be so new. It's going to like push you into the new, whether you like it or not. But as you get into that new, there comes this realization of, oh, that other stuff is not there anymore. Like that threat, that restriction, it's gone. And that'll gradually be realized. But the PTSD, I think, is a big factor right now.
Yeah, it's not like we just suddenly go kapoof and it's all different. It's going to be quite a process. And yeah, at the beginning, we are going to be clearing a lot of old stuff because when Pluto comes around, it's like, okay, transformation time now, transmutation. How's that one? And that means a lot of the old structures that we've been accustomed to simply have to fall by the wayside. And a lot of folks aren't quite ready for that one yet, but a lot of us are.
Well, and I think that that's also the beauty of really the last 4 years as there's been, more of an exact hit on the U.S. Pluto return. I mean, it first went very exact in, February 2022, but going back to like 2020, it was very close aspect of that 27-degree Capricorn. And now as Pluto is entering Aquarius, we're on the backside, moving out of that transit. But it just, to me, it feels like it's rebirth time. It's the regeneration after the destruction. You're surveying the results of the storm. And yeah, there's things that need to be repaired. There's things that are never going to come back. And that's the grief element. But if we allow room for, hey, what comes forward could be something really innovative. That's Aquarius. Or could be something really inclusive. That's Aquarius.
If we look at the old Capricornian tendencies and contrast that with the possibilities we have in Aquarius, then we can generate a little more enthusiasm for the process here. And I'm, looking at big picture, I'm still jazzed about the big picture. And yeah, there are going to be uncomfortable phases we go through in the midst of the process of the old really being cleared out. But what a lot of people look toward is, okay, we have these structures and yeah, okay, they've been pretty dysfunctional. And so we're going to bring in new structures. And it's like the difference here that a lot of people are not seeing is that we're transitioning from needing those kinds of structures to not needing any at all. Like we're going to have a transitional form of economy until we realize there's no need for an economy. Sure. Like go back to the song Imagine. All right. Why if we're truly evolved, what do we need with religions? What do we need with governments, etc.?
Yeah, that's another thing I was thinking of with Neptune moving from Pisces into Aries and then Saturn, being there as well. I think there's going to be a reevaluation of kind of what I call like the New Age Borg, right? Like there's some, there's a lot of spiritual bypassing that has been in effect, and it's wonderful to have a spiritual practice and everything, but I just feel like when Neptune's been in Pisces especially, you get the positives and the negatives, and one of the negatives is like completely obliterating even like any sense of your own will or any sense of your own willingness to initiate change outside of this sort of media broadcasting or something. So it feels like taking more spiritual sovereignty is one way that could play out.
That sounds like something I'm on board with. So let's go for this. Because there is so much liberation in this process. And of course, Aquarius does like liberation.
Mm-hmm.
And I often say that with the ruler of Aquarius, our good friend Uranus, anywhere he goes in our chart, it's like first thing he does, he goes, okay, what's holding you down? You back. This isn't working. Okay. And unlike Neptune, who does the slow dissolver and real nice, easy stuff,
Right.
it's like, okay, we're going to get this in the crosshairs and wait till just the right moment and boom, clear it out.
Yeah. So
What other surprises?
when yeah, so it's July that Uranus enters Gemini, July 7th, and July 4th, Venus enters Gemini. So those are going to be nicely trining Pluto in Aquarius at that time. So even though Uranus entering Gemini could be a little shocking, right? Like shocking information that comes, or like a toppling down of digital awareness or how we convey information. We have Venus there kind of doing her thing, paving the way a little bit right before Uranus does that. I feel like that's a blessing.
Well, sure, she'll take some of the edge off it
Mm-hmm.
because that's what she tends to do. So we'll still have some pretty intense shifting going on, but she'll help smooth out the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do feel, going back to the US North and South nodes. So it's right around 6 degrees of Aquarius, 6 degrees Leo. And I just feel like Pluto conjuncting the South node is actually going to be helpful in the sense that the South node is about letting go of things, releasing things that no longer serve. And of the planets to help you do that, I mean, Pluto is good at purging stuff. And unlike some situations where there might be an option not to purge, in which case there's a lot more resistance, I just don't feel like with Pluto conjuncting the South node of the US, like there's no option not to change. Like change is on the menu and you can't take it off the menu. Like it's going to have a feeding tube to the country if it won't change. But I feel like with that energy and then all of this other new energy, I do feel like that's going to make it easier to make the changes.
And as we get into maybe like May of 2025, I really see a real shift happening around then, where now the real crazy stuff has run its course as we make the difficult adjustments because people are still in resistance. Like some people are just doing total meltdowns because of this election, but whatever. We'll see how it works out.
Mm-hmm.
But once we get into the latter part of 2025, that's going to be an interesting process. And I see a good year and a half there where we're really doing serious shifting without the horrid disruption. It's like we're not getting jarred so much anymore, which is setting us up for some really, really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to 27, actually, and a lot of this comes to culmination in 2028. And yeah, okay, let's do this. We're going to enter a time of prosperity like we've never known. Yeah. So I'll vote yes.
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's a lot of rhetoric around that. I mean, certainly like the Trump campaign has been talking about that, but this is what I've been trying to tell people is that whether he's saying it or not, it's likely to happen just because of the astrology. I mean, the collective energies, and I think you're right. The difference between a Uranus square to Pluto and a Uranus trine to Pluto is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the last time we had Uranus trining Pluto was actually the approaching trine, and that was like 1921, 1922 in there. It really opened the gateways for a lot more abundance. And of course, may we choose more wisely this time? Because look what they did in the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, since that was the approaching trine, it only needed to go 30 more degrees to the square. So you get into the early 30s. What did you have?
Yeah, the backlash, the depression. Yeah.
Yeah, Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and all of that stuff. So this one, though, of course, we've already had the square. And so now we just come another 30 degrees, and it's time for the trine. And it doesn't have that same pressure that you would have in another square just 30 degrees later.
Mm-hmm.
And things are going to be so much different by then anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, the dissolution of existing structures is going to be absolutely breathtaking over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. And when is it that Jupiter enters Cancer June 9th. And that's going to be a shift too, because we've had Jupiter in Gemini since May, and having it out of the information zone. I mean, I think part of what's going on for people is just it's like drinking from the fire hose with, with Jupiter and Gemini. It's like there's so much information. And while there is truth coming out like it never has before, there's so much of it that a lot of people can't integrate it. It's like when it starts pouring rain after you've had, this like dry, arid period, and you can't get it to absorb. And I feel like when Jupiter moves into Cancer, that's going to allow some more optimistic emotions to come into play as we're making these other changes. And so, I mean, we will get a square with Jupiter in Cancer and the planets in early Aries. I mean, that will be happening, but it still feels like this could be supportive energy to the emotional parts of us that are maybe a little afraid to change. Cancer has that protective quality, but with Jupiter there, you get this kind of optimism and encouragement. And I don't know, I just, do you have that sense of that shift from Gemini into Cancer for Jupiter?
Sure. And even with Jupiter, squares, well, that's not a big deal. It's Jupiter. So it's like, okay, cool. And getting out of the crazy information wars that we've been in the midst of here. Because, Jupiter did the full retrograde here in Gemini, went up 21 degrees, retrograding back to 11 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a lot of Gemini to go through here.
Yeah.
Which is why so many people are on overload right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, deal with it. Yeah. And, I'm enjoying this because so many rabbit holes have opened up that we can explore.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have a very different collective view of our history on Earth and who are we anyway, just as a species here? What is this human thing here? To say that we have been misled a bit is a pretty severe understatement.
Everything's a lie. So.
Nothing in this world is what it appears to be.
Mm-hmm.
But our perspectives are going to shift tremendously. And I like your approach there with Jupiter then moving into Cancer because, well, Cancer can also be kind of warm and fuzzy and, it's like, okay, comfy, cushy and so forth. It can help us ease into and absorb so much of the shocking information that so many people have, tried to avoid, even though it's getting more and more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's the thing. We had Jupiter in Gemini, big expansion of information, but Jupiter's in fall in Gemini too. So, I mean, it's a little odd energy. When Uranus enters Gemini, there's not going to be a shortage of shocking information. I mean, I think Jupiter came through as kind of like, hey, we can do this the easy way. It's going to be drinking from the fire hose, but like you can do it ahead of time, or you can wait and it's going to be more shocking, more like tower card kind of shocks with Uranus there. But again, as we discussed, Venus will be there kind of smoothing the rough edges initially. And the other thing that I like about Pluto and Aquarius is the Aquarius energy is very open to experimentation. And so there's not necessarily this absolute necessity to get it right this one time. Like, it's kind of like, oh, that's not quite working. Well, Uranus and Gemini is like, oh, let's flip it up a bit. Let's try a different way. And with Pluto and Aquarius, it's like, oh, yeah, let's get rid of the stuff that's not working and we can try something new. And if that doesn't work, we can try a little something else new. And to me, that just feels like easier energy. But then again, I have a lot of Aquarius and Gemini in my chart. So
Just a bit, yeah. Yeah. So many of these folks out here who approach everything from a fear base, they look at the possibilities in front of us shifting now with really getting into the age of Aquarius, and they'll ask like, well, who's going to regulate this? Well, nobody. Yeah, it's like time for us to just grow up and get real here and realize we don't need authoritarian structures.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to do that. We don't need religions telling us what's real and what isn't. And there are lots of people now who do understand that there's like 3 universes worth of difference between religiosity and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Because religiosity is, first of all, externally oriented, because you're accepting somebody else's story of what is real, what is true, etc. So that gives away a chunk of your power right there. But then also, since they're the authority on what's real and what isn't, well, then you better play by their rules because they're the ones who know. Whereas spirituality is just an exploration of your own consciousness and whatever relationship you have to whatever universe you find yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
And Aquarius can be pretty open and pretty loose in its interpretations.
Yeah. So the other thing that's going to be very different energy is we've been in the US Pluto return, but then we've also had a simultaneous US Chiron return. And that's rough. That's been rough. That was all of 2023 and pretty much all of 2024. We're still going to be in the return of Chiron in 2025, but then it moves on. And I think that's when we're really going to start noticing the changes in the US, that it doesn't hurt so much. And we end up having more of the healing. And that's going to go back like every 50 years worth of Chiron returns, healing a lot of those gaping wounds that, maybe they healed on the surface, but there was still like this hole and like festering wound underneath. The combination of the Pluto return and the Chiron return at the same time is like, let's rip this open. Let's, break this bone that never healed right. We're going to straighten this out. And so to me, that's a big one that I don't think people have realized just how hard it has been for people in the United States to be undergoing both of those transits at the same time.
And the first part of healing is going through the uncomfortable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Lancing the boil.
Yeah.
So it's been a journey here. So many people have gotten through this and actually, go back to Nietzsche, that which does not kill us makes us stronger.
Mm-hmm. So I did want to kind of give people a little bit of a heads up about sort of the first week of December, because that's some pretty intense energy that, and around the holidays too, like the Christmas holidays. Both of those time periods are, I would say, a good time to be really nurturing yourself and really choose who you are spending time with. Like, choose it carefully, because those could be extremely reactive times. And as we're moving into these new energies, a lot of them don't quite get going until next year. And so while our longer term forecast is positive, I do feel like it could be bumpy for the rest of the year, especially first week of December, when we get Mercury's retrograde then, and we've got this Mercury retrograde opposite Jupiter in Gemini, so Mercury in Sagittarius, so mutual reception, but kind of a weird energy, and that's in context of Mars stationing retrograde in Leo on the 6th, but probably acting a little early, and then Neptune stationing direct on the 7th. It's just there's a lot of changing energy there. So yeah, just a heads up to people that could be a little trickier to manage. Do it with maybe people that are in the same level of consciousness that you are, because for people that are more awake, it could be a lovely, very creative time. But if you're with people that are very reactive, that could be a trigger time.
And we don't want to forget that we still have the possibility of some of these beings who are very trapped in the illusions of old control structures, and you want to maintain everything. They grip with white knuckles to the old system, which is getting dismantled. They can still kick up a bit of a fuss in the next several months.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Yeah, it is interesting. I looked up transits for Inauguration Day, and kind of interesting. I mean, who knows, timing of anything, right? But if Inauguration Day is on January 20th, on January 19th, the sun enters Aquarius at exactly noon Eastern time. And then we'll have Mercury sextile both Saturn and Venus in Pisces, because Venus is conjunct Saturn at that time. So that, I feel, is a little buffer there. But then on the 21st, we have the exact conjunction of the sun with Pluto in Aquarius. So the inauguration occurs in between there. And there's a transiting yod that day on Inauguration Day that involves Uranus and Saturn and the transiting moon, I want to say. Yeah, Uranus and... All right, we're going to start this over. So on Inauguration Day, there is this transiting yod with Uranus in Taurus and Saturn in Pisces, and then the moon moving through Libra. And so you get this kind of like finger of God energy, even though that moon is going to be opposite the U.S. natal Chiron and conjunct Black Moon Lilith. So there is reactivity. There's a sense of order that day, like a divine kind of order that I do feel like that's supportive of whatever kind of transition takes place at that time, not just talking about the inauguration itself, but the changes that initiates in the rest of the world.
And you mentioned earlier, too, that we're going to have Pluto stationing retrograde on, what is it, the 4th of May?
Let me see. Pluto. Yeah, May 4th, Pluto stations retrograde, and it's set 3 degrees, 49 minutes. And so not quite to the U.S. South Node, but within orb of that. So May 4th, and then stations direct October 13th.
And right at about that time, maybe the 3rd or whatever it is, that's when Uranus finally finishes the exact triple transit over our goal. Yes, that'll be interesting.
So that's another relief point, because that's been a challenge, just like the U.S. Pluto return, just like the U.S. Chiron return, Uranus crisscrossing Algol. has been rough, and there's not a way to sugarcoat that one. That one is pretty tough, right?
Well, yeah, it is. But as we discussed last time, um, Algol, literally the ghoul, the demon star, also known as Medusa's head, it's in the Perseus constellation. And Perseus, of course, is the guy who beheaded Medusa. And so that fixed star, Algol, represents Medusa's head.
Mm-hmm.
But even though it had been severed, it didn't lose its power. But Perseus then was able to use it defensively, ward off attacks then.
Yeah, I do feel like 2025 is going to be the year of the boomerang. I mean, like a massive boomerang of using old tools like Medusa's head, but it's like, oh, we've taken this over. Like there's a new boss in town, and I'm not just talking about Donald Trump. I'm like talking about this for all of us. Like we are coming into our sovereignty.
Yeah. Yeah. New sheriff in town. That can be applied all over the map. And that's the thing about that top-down structure. We keep thinking it's all about whoever is occupying a certain office.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really the decentralization of the power that's going to make all of the difference.
Yeah. Well, and also just, yeah, I like what you're saying about that maybe part of this fixation on who's in charge is one of the things that will start to fade away as Pluto's more in Aquarius and as we get all of these changes where it just doesn't matter as much.
Right. And, eventually, again, we're going to get to the point that we will get to this place of realizing we don't need any of these old structures. I mean, if we're truly stepping into our potential, which is our universal creatorship, minor detail, then we have no need of an economy. We have no need of a government or a religion or any of these things. Mm-hmm. And what a time we have ahead of us. It's going to be pretty amazing.
And what are you expecting in terms of kind of UFO disclosure or something? I mean, I feel like that there's rumblings now, but I feel like that's another thing that we're likely to find is like UFO disclosure so far has been a lot of top-down stuff, right? It's like very controlled who gets to talk about what. And then you have kind of the people that are the personal experiencers talking about that. But I feel like that hierarchy is kind of going to flip or dismantle where the personal experiences and like groups of people that are talking about effects and talking about, consciousness and the changes that occur, with psychic work or doing Reiki or things like that. I feel like that's going to become much more of the flavor of disclosure as opposed to, this quote unquote ex-CIA person or, that's like managing and massaging and keeping things in very tight boundaries. I feel like Aquarius is just going to be like, oh, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, it's like we've been so accustomed to there being limited hangouts, okay, we'll let this little bit of information out and let people get all excited about that, but we're keeping this under wraps over here and so on and so forth. But Aquarius just is not interested in that. It's like, kick out the jams, open it up, let's go.
Yeah. So when people ask, because I've been asked this question, what does the next 4 years hold for us? I mean, astrologically, I would say it holds a lot of potential, and that's really not related to who's in charge because nobody's really going to be in charge other than like we are in charge of ourselves. We are sovereign beings.
So we may look at certain people as facilitators.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, we're at the end of this long phase of dysfunctional experience here where we have corruption, just barely under the surface of all of these structures. And to move beyond that, because one of the games is, of course, keep people in the dark, but keep people in fear.
Mm-hmm.
And with us being able to step more into our own creative power, it's going to be a huge difference. And it's like Earth's energy field is shifting, and it's going to be a completely different biosphere eventually here.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be a shift.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that we haven't mentioned, which is all of these X-class and M-class solar flares. So, I mean, the sun is very powerful right now. And a lot of those CMEs and like the changes in the electromagnetic field, I mean, it can be disorienting and people can have flu-like symptoms and things like that, but it's another kind of detox. And so that's the other reason that I was looking at kind of that inauguration time is less because it's inauguration than of the coincidence that that inauguration happens in context of the sun conjuncting Pluto, because the sun does feel particularly strong right now. And I just feel like that's like a real light in the darkness. Sunlight is a disinfectant, and we're going to get a big dose of it right at that time period.
Which is pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So we can be jazzed about some things in the short term as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, again, long term, I'm really seeing that we are stepping out of our chains.
Yeah.
It's like, this is true liberation.
Yeah. So is there anything that we have not covered that you think we should?
Well, there's plenty that we haven't covered. I mean, there's the rest of infinity out here. Nothing comes to mind, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do people find you?
Soulpurposereadings.com, although it's been brought to my attention that I don't have an SSL certificate, so some of the search engines might tell you, pass this way and you may die. It's okay, we'll take care of that, but whatever.
All right. Well, we'll have to figure out what our next series will be, but this is a wrap for our Pluto entering Aquarius series. And it feels like, I don't know, a little celebration, but also maybe a little sad. So.
Yeah. Well, it's been an adventure.
It has. So thank you so much for doing all of these episodes. And I know that people have really appreciated your wisdom and just, the decades of perspective that you've been able to bring to the table for studying these, transits for so long. So thank you.
And thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we will catch you guys all next time. If you found this valuable, it does actually really help to have people subscribe. So I hate to ask that, but if you think this is worth getting out, that would be helpful. So, all right, everybody take care. Bye.
Whatever that was.